Okay, let's jump right in. So you want a Linux server. If you have $5 and want to run tests and possibly even a website, I recommend DigitalOcean. It's simple, easy, and does not require much to get started. In this demo, I will demonstrate how to create a droplet, which is the equivalent of a virtual machine, how to log in, and how we can install a simple web service like Nginx. So I have already logged in to my account, and I have a couple droplets and a couple of virtual machines running some services, uh, especially my website, which I have running on DigitalOcean. But one of the first things that you want to do in order to create a virtual machine is that you select create. Once you have your account created, of course, select droplets. You select the image type. In this case, or in this scenario, I would choose CentOS 7. 7.5 is what they have available. The cheapest that you can go for is the $5 one. And trust me, this is more than enough for your tests and more than enough if you want to, you know, get your feet wet with Linux and Unix-based operating systems. We don't want to add backups. We don't want to add block storage. All that does is it's going to increase the cost. We want to keep it down to $5. So I'm East Coast, so I'm going to select New York. I don't need any of this as of right now. I'm not going to do SSH keys. I plan on doing a separate video on how to connect to your Linux environment using SSH keys. I'm going to choose the name, so I'm just going to leave it as the default name for now. And yes, I just want one droplet, but you can create multiple droplets at once if needed. Okay, so my droplet has been created. One of the things that you're going to want to do is that you're going to want to log into your email address that you signed up with the account for DigitalOcean. Once you retrieve the username and password that gets sent to that email address, you will be able to log into that service or that virtual machine using the IP address and the username and password provided. Typically, the username is root, and then the password is whatever is sent to your email. Now that the virtual machine has completed provisioning and I have the proper credentials to log in, I can now SSH into the machine. The way that you can SSH into the machine using Windows is with an application called Puddi. Puddi is an SSH client that allows you to interface with web services or any service that runs SSH. So what I'll do is that I'll grab the IP address and I'll put it under the host name, just copy and paste. And I will also paste in the description the address where you can go and download the Puddi configuration or the Puddi client. So now that I have the IP address, and this is a public IP address, DigitalOcean will always supply you with the public IP address. Once you have the public IP address here under hostname and IP addresses, you just want to select open. You want to select yes to the Puddi security alert. Then you want to type in root, and you want to type in, copy and pasting in the password that was provided. Now, in Puddi, one way that so once you're using Puddi, right, and you go in here and you copy it from here, right, you select copy it from the Windows section, and you want to paste. All that you have to do is just right click. You right click on the Puddi console, so on the black screen of the Puddi application, and that would automatically paste in the password. Okay, now it's asking me for the password again, so I will paste it again by right clicking, and I will enter in my new password. And I'm going to show you guys how that works again. So essentially, let's say I have let's say I want to just type ifconfig, right? And now if I double click using the left key, so if I click it twice using the left mouse key. So I'm clicking on it using the left. If I right click using the right click on the mouse, it pastes it. So selecting it with the left key copies it, and then just clicking on it once with the right key pastes it. That's something that Puddi works, and once that's just how Puddi works. And once you get a hang of it, it's really convenient. So that's it. I now have a Linux machine, and it's running. We can check which version of CentOS is using by catting redhat-release, and it shows that I'm running 7.5, right? One of the first things that you want to do now you have your Linux system set up is that you want to create a user, right? So if we look into the passwd file under etc, you'll notice that we have a couple of system users, but we don't really have a user created. So one way that you can create a user is just by typing in the following. So in this case, I am creating a user called areyes, and then I'm adding it to the wheel group. On typical Red Hat and Linux system, and Red Hat and CentOS systems, the wheel group is the administrator group, kind of like the administrators group in Windows. In CentOS and in Red Hat, it's the administrator group. It's the wheel group. Now, I will do another video on creating and accessing and modifying users in a Linux environment. But for now, this is just best practice to get you up and running. So if I type ID areyes, I could see that I am in the wheel group and the user is created. Now, the user has been created, but I haven't assigned a password to it. So I type in passwd. So you basically passwd. That's the one way of knowing it. Now I type in the new password for that account. Now that the account is on the wheels group, I can change into that account, or I can simulate that I'm that account. Now I'm that account. So now I am areyes. So if I type in who am I'm areyes. So I'm basically sudoing into areyes, or a switch user, which is one way I like to memorize it. So I need to make sure that I'm root, because I'm going to disable root. And yes, I can get into root. Another thing I want to do is that I want to make sure that I can SSH, not that one. I want to make sure that I can SSH using the areyes account before I disable root. And yes, I can. So now I'm going to, this is just best practice, right? So one of the first things that you want to do is that you want to, oh, and Vim is not installed. So I will install Vim. So Yum is the package manager for CentOS. It allows you to install applications. You don't need to install Vim right from the start, so I will just do VI, which comes natively in almost every single Linux system. And VI is a text editor, which allows you to edit texts inside a Linux console or a Linux shell. So what I did was, just to go back, what I did was that I went into VI and I am SSH. I went to VI and then I went to etc ssh sshd_config. That's where I will block access to the root user. So now I'm going to search for the root user, and I'm going to uncomment. So as you see, the number sign signifies comments. I'm uncommenting permit root login, and I'm selecting no. Now that that is done, we have to restart the service in order for it to come into effect. So I'm going to restart the SSHD service. Now, if I try to SSH again as root, it's not going to let me, and it's access denied. Okay, so root can no longer log into the service. And I'll get a little bit deeper into security, but this is just whenever you have a Linux system, especially if it's open to the public, one of the first things that you want to do is, one, you want to disable root access to the server. You can only SSH into it using a specific username or a specific user account. The next thing you want to do is that you want to change the port and make sure that your firewall rules are opened. So each server has a firewall rule, and you can also enable firewall rules in using DigitalOcean systems. So now that we have our Linux system and we have a user account created, the next thing we want to do is that we want to just install a simple Nginx service and just, play around with it. A couple of the commands to keep in mind, right? And you can search for this on Google. Search for simple Linux commands or basic Linux commands. This would get you into more of a habit of configuring and how to access it, how to navigate yourself around a Linux system, right? So this is the root directory of the Linux system, right? So you have different folders, and each folder has a function. But for now, for this specific video, I'm just going to show you what a Linux system is capable of doing, and how easy it is to set it up, right? So I'm going to install Nginx, right? And let's see, because I don't think it comes natively with the, no, let's see if I can install the repository. Okay. So I cannot install Nginx because I do not have the repository. A repository is basically a collection of packages that allow me to install applications. So if I select no and I do yum repo lists, which shows all of the repositories that I have access to, I only have access to the CentOS 7 repositories. I don't have access to the epel repositories. Once I install it, now I suddenly have access to the epel repositories, which provide me an extra 2,000 packages. So now that I have access to epel, I can just go in and install Nginx. Now I want to make sure that I have Nginx enabled. That way, if I restart the service, or if I restart the server, Nginx will be the first application to start. And I want to make sure that I can start Nginx. I can check the status of it by running Nginx status. I see that it's running. Now, another thing that I can do is that I can check to make sure that it's listening on the correct port, which Nginx is listening on port 80, which is good. Now I can go into the IP address on the browser, and yes, welcome to Nginx. We now have an Nginx service, and if that's how you can tell that it's working, right? But if it wasn't working, then you'll probably get something like this. Site cannot be reached. See, same IP address. I stopped the service. Now I'm going to start it again. And now boom, it's up and running again. So Nginx is a great tool. It's a great web service. It allows you to basically run a website on bare minimum. I mean, if we look at what this server has, you know, look at the memory. It's what, 1 gig, 1 gig of memory, and then we just have that one processor. So this is bare minimum, and for $5, I think this is the best way that you guys can, you know, get up and running on Linux and get up and running with setting up your own web services and getting the hands-on experience. I think this is a lot better than just installing an Ubuntu or a CentOS machine locally on your machine, because this gives you the real-world experience of connecting to an external system, which is how Linux is typically used. So I hope you guys like this video, and hopefully you subscribe. I will be posting videos at least once a month. Thank you. This has been great. This is Alex, and thank you again for taking a look at my videos.